Garages often ask us when they should start working on EV and hybrids. Should they be preparing for it now? In this video, I'm going to explain all of the steps that you should take into account when gearing up for this process. We're going to cover equipment, tooling, training, processes, and basic understanding of electric vehicles. So let's start with the very basics. As most of you are aware, the IMI and City and Guilds hold training courses. There's level 1 to level 4. Level 1 is the basic understanding of electric vehicles and understanding the basics of safety around it. Level 2 and 3, the basics of safe disconnection of electric vehicles, changing components and safety testing around those vehicles. Level 4 is the advanced level. It's like going from a GCSE to a degree. There's a lot more involved with that, and that's the point when you actually become an EV technician fully and you're able to strip batteries, check out battery cells, understand how motors, inverters work, etc., etc. So that's a much more advanced level. Predominantly in the UK today, there are really 3 types. We have a full BEV, which is a full battery electric vehicle, of which is numerous types at the moment. The Chinese are coming into the market. You'll see things like BYD, many other brands appearing. Tesla was the dominant force, but all manufacturers, and it's changing very, very quickly. Then you have got what is called a PHEV, a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, not to be confused with a HEV. So a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle tends to have a much smaller battery than a full BEV vehicle, but it's got a battery that will have a range of, say, 40 to 60 miles, which allows the user to do some local driving around. It also has HEV functionality, which I'll explain about in a minute, within that vehicle. And generally, that car may do over 100 mpg combined for the user, depending what they're doing. That'll have a battery, it'll have a motor, and it'll have a petrol engine or a diesel engine. Predominantly now in 2025, most seem to be actually petrol because obviously manufacturers are veering away from diesel anyway. A hybrid electric vehicle, you cannot charge. It has a very small battery, and effectively this battery acts as assistance. When you pull away in the vehicle up to certain miles an hour, it will use the battery and electric motor, and then over that certain miles an hour, the petrol engine or diesel engine will kick in and it will generate its own power and charge its own battery. And when you're actually cruising along at, say, 70 miles an hour on the steady road without load, the motor will then kick in. These use an epicyclic gearbox. They're very, very smart, and Toyota perfected them a long time ago with the ever popular Prius. So you really have to understand the differences before you start looking at vehicles. Quickest way to do this, to be honest with you, is look at some of the service instructions on the vehicles and it'll actually tell you what it is. Going back to the level 1 standard, that's not really covered on level 1 either. That is something that you really do have to do the research on yourself, because bless the IMI and City and Guilds, they're never going to be able to catch up with any of this because there's more vehicles coming out than has ever come out before on electric vehicles. I think there's something like 15 new vehicles coming out a month at the beginning of 2025, particularly from the Chinese market. It's having an understanding, look at the vehicle. A tech safe certificate will eventually become law, I'm pretty sure, or be demanded at least by insurance companies to say that person was competent to fix that vehicle and has a take safe qualification. The common myths about EVs. So the first one is that they were really expensive. I'm sure that when the iPod came out, they were £1,000, and now you can get one. Well, you can't even get an iPod anymore. You get a phone for next to nothing now. The price, I think, comes down with the immersion, as I mentioned before, the Chinese stuff. Things are getting cheaper and cheaper. I'm seeing NG seals on the market, second-hand, only a couple of years old, for £5,000. It is becoming more affordable, therefore people are buying them. Therefore, us in the aftermarket has to start looking at this as an opportunity. The second one is they're really heavy. Teslas, when I first started working on Teslas on the Model S's, God, they were really heavy. And I used to wear out suspension components all the time, which again was actually a great opportunity because you were able to fix them. If you've got a 4-ton lift like the one behind me, 4-ton is going to be the maximum that you're ever going to use anyway on one of these, unless you're lifting up some kind of a Hummer or something like that. Standard workshop equipment's pretty applicable for that. And the other thing is, they're difficult to get parts for. There's this. Is that not really? Not anymore. Again, that's all out. Using Tesla again as the example, you can actually buy most of the stuff off the shelf now. The diagnostics for Tesla, you can actually buy the Tesla tool directly. You can buy all sorts of stuff, lots of information for Tesla. Where we are struggling a little bit is with the brand new Chinese stuff, because obviously it's brand new. Yet the weight is no longer a concern, a spare's no longer a concern, and the price is no longer a concern, which means more and more people are buying them. I mean, you have to just open your eyes and look around, because every other car seems to be a PHEV, a HEV, or a BEV these days. Overall, And according to the SMMT figures of this year, the market has opened right up. Once you've done your training, where do you start? What do you actually buy to start off? When you've done your training, you learn how to isolate cars correctly. So the first thing you're going to need is a decent multimeter to check those cars are dead. With your pair of insulated gloves, which these are brand new out of the pack. They should be marked with the date to say when you first open them. These are a class of 1,000-volt gloves, which actually you have to replace every few months. Not cheap, but worth it if you're doing a lot of work. You'll find that once the car's dead and you're actually working on it, the insulated gloves aren't in play, particularly when the battery is disconnected. You just start to use normal tools at that point. What you're going to need next is an insulated toolkit for health and safety reasons. If you suspect something may still be live, or for example, there's a little bit of charge in a capacitor, you want to use your insulated tools just to make sure. And if you're actually up to level 4 and you start stripping batteries, that's when you're really going to have to use these tools. Relatively, the cost now is around £500 to get geared up to do this. You've done your training, you've got your tools. What's the return on investment? Well, the answer is at the moment, the return on investment is simply you're going to be able to touch another big part of the market legally and safely. The investment is relatively low compared to the return that you can get on it. And once you've got that practice, once you've got your hand in with these electric vehicles, you will start get customers coming to you. And you no longer have to say, oh, yeah, we can't do EVs. Or, I mean, I go to a lot of garages who still say, oh, we're not going to touch them. It's insane. It's just like saying, well, we're not going to touch cars in future, because they're all going to be either EV or hybrid, unless you're going to be some kind of classic car specialist, obviously. What skills are transferable from being a regular diesel and petrol mechanic? Well, absolutely everything, because a lot of these cars are going to be hybrids. So you need to know about diesel or petrol engines. So that's a massive transferable skill. The diagnostic tools that you're going to be using are the same diagnostic tools. Admittedly, you might use them in a slightly different way. You might have to understand things like heat pumps, electric heaters, battery cooling, battery heating, that sort of stuff. But guess what? That's all done diagnostically as well, using exactly the same tools as you've already got. Aftermarket tools are really relevant in the EV market. We're having more and more push towards actual specific EV tooling. Although be aware, because as usual, aftermarket tools do not provide you with the same coverage as an OEM tool would. For example, when we use things like battery status health, or when we're trying to spot an individual cell gone down in a vehicle, we'll always plug in the OE tool, which will give us more guided information and data. And we're also able to program things like BMSs. So BMW, for example, now, if you want to do a swap from one car to another, you actually need the BMW tool and another bit of kit to actually program and code that battery into that vehicle. No aftermarket tool currently does that. So be aware and have a talk to us about your needs for OEM tooling with electric vehicle. I hope this video has been helpful for everybody out there in the aftermarket struggling to know what to do. All I can say is EVs are a lot more approachable than everybody thinks they are, and this is coming from a massive petrol head. Unfortunately, whether you like it or not, it's the future, and a quite small investment will get you going. EVs are not something to be scared of. You just need to know the process, the limits, invest in training, invest in a little bit of tooling, and more than anything, have the will to move forward with your business. If you're interested in OE tooling and finding out more, please visit maverickdiagnostics.com.